Eleanor Hayes had lived in the quiet ranching town of Willow Creek, Montana for nearly all her life. Surrounded by rolling golden fields and distant mountain ranges, the little town was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, family history, and daily routines. At 38, Eleanor had become one of the town's most familiar faces. She ran the small general store her father had left behind years ago, greeting every customer with kindness and patience. Yet despite her warm nature and graceful beauty, people often whispered the same question whenever they spoke about her in hushed conversations behind closed doors and quiet sidewalks. For years, townspeople wondered why Eleanor had never married. In a place like Willow Creek, where most women settled down young and started families early, her situation felt unusual to many. Some believed she had loved someone who broke her heart long ago. Others assumed she simply cared too much about responsibility and never made room for love. The truth, however, was something Eleanor herself could barely explain. Deep inside, she carried a quiet certainty that her life was somehow unfinished, as though fate had written a chapter yet to arrive, leaving her heart patiently waiting without reason. Each morning she opened the store before sunrise, arranging flour sacks, canned goods, and fresh vegetables delivered by nearby ranchers. Her life followed the same peaceful routine every day. Customers came and left, conversations repeated themselves, and evenings ended with her sitting alone on the front porch of the old farmhouse watching the sunset behind the mountains. Though solitude had become familiar, Eleanor never considered herself lonely. Somewhere deep within her heart, there lived a strange sense of anticipation, an unshaken belief that the life meant for her had not yet fully begun despite all passing years. That autumn, change arrived unexpectedly when the town school board announced the hiring of a new teacher for Willow Creek Elementary. The previous teacher had retired after 20 years, leaving the tiny school in urgent need of someone willing to relocate to such a remote place. News spread quickly, and curiosity grew among the residents. Small towns treasured change because so little ever happened. Eleanor listened quietly as customers discussed rumors about the newcomer, but she paid little attention. Another stranger entering town hardly seemed important enough to interrupt the peaceful rhythm she had grown accustomed to protecting carefully. 2 days later, Eleanor stood behind the counter organizing receipts when the bell above the store door rang softly. She glanced upward and saw a man she immediately recognized must be the new arrival. He was tall, wearing a brown jacket dusted from travel, carrying a worn leather bag over one shoulder. His dark hair moved slightly in the cool breeze following him inside. There was something calm and thoughtful about the way he carried himself. He stepped forward politely and offered a warm smile that somehow made the quiet room feel different, though Eleanor could not understand exactly why. "Afternoon," he said, his voice steady and kind. "I'm looking for the elementary school. I seem to have taken the wrong road coming into town." Eleanor felt strangely nervous, though speaking to strangers had always come naturally to her. She gave him directions, explaining how the school sat beyond the church near the southern road. He listened carefully, then smiled again with genuine appreciation. "Thank you. I'm Daniel Carter, by the way. Just moved here from Boston." For reasons she could not explain, hearing his name made her heartbeat quicken in a way completely unfamiliar. After that first meeting, Daniel began visiting the store regularly. Sometimes he needed classroom supplies, other times simple groceries after school ended. Each visit seemed to stretch longer than the last. Their conversations began with ordinary topics but slowly drifted toward books, childhood memories, favorite seasons, and stories about places they had traveled. Eleanor discovered Daniel possessed an easy kindness rare in most people she had known. He listened carefully whenever she spoke, never interrupting, always making her feel as though every word mattered. Weeks passed, and without realizing it, Eleanor found herself looking forward to hearing the bell ring each afternoon. The town soon noticed their growing friendship. Older women smiled knowingly whenever Daniel entered the store while Eleanor stood behind the counter pretending not to notice their amused expressions. Yet for the first time in many years, she found herself genuinely happy. Something about Daniel's presence brought life back into corners of her heart she had forgotten existed. She laughed more often now. Even the quiet evenings on her porch felt warmer somehow. Deep inside, that strange lifelong feeling of waiting began shifting into something clearer, as though invisible pieces of a puzzle were finally beginning to connect. One Friday afternoon, Daniel stopped by after helping children prepare decorations for the school's upcoming Thanksgiving gathering. The sunlight poured softly through the windows, filling the store with golden warmth. As Eleanor arranged glass jars behind the counter, Daniel noticed old family photographs hanging nearby. Studying them quietly, he turned toward her with curiosity in his eyes. His expression softened as he leaned gently against the wooden counter. "Eleanor," he asked carefully, his voice almost hesitant, "there's something I've wondered ever since arriving here. Why did someone like you never marry?" Hearing those words, Eleanor froze completely, knowing everything was about to change. The question hung quietly in the warm air of the little store, and for several seconds Eleanor simply stared at Daniel without moving. Outside, the late afternoon wind carried fallen autumn leaves across the empty street, while somewhere in the distance a horsecart rolled slowly past. Daniel immediately noticed the sudden change in her expression and almost apologized, worried he had stepped too far into a part of her life she preferred hidden. But Eleanor did not look offended. Instead, her eyes softened with a strange calmness, as if hearing those words had finally opened a door inside her heart she had kept closed for years. She lowered the jar she had been holding and slowly rested both hands against the wooden counter between them. For years she had heard whispers from neighbors asking the same question in secret conversations, yet somehow hearing Daniel ask it felt entirely different. His voice carried no judgment, only honest curiosity. Eleanor drew a quiet breath, holding his gaze longer than she ever had before. Then a faint smile touched her lips, small but sincere. "I suppose I never met the person I was meant to build a life with," she said softly, though even as she spoke she realized the answer still remained incomplete. Daniel nodded gently, waiting, sensing there was more hidden behind her careful words. The silence between them stretched naturally, but for Eleanor something powerful stirred inside. She thought of every year spent alone, every quiet evening watching sunsets from her porch, every moment she wondered why life felt unfinished despite outward peace. Suddenly the strange certainty she had carried since her youth finally made perfect sense. Without fully thinking, she stepped closer and met Daniel's eyes with complete honesty. Her voice trembled slightly, yet the words left her lips with surprising confidence. "Maybe," she whispered softly, "I was simply waiting for you all along." For a moment Daniel stood completely frozen, as though time itself had stopped moving around them. His eyes widened with disbelief, not because he felt uncomfortable, but because hearing her confession struck something deeply familiar inside his own heart. Eleanor quickly felt warmth rising to her cheeks, wondering if she had said too much too suddenly. Yet Daniel did not step away. Instead, a quiet smile slowly formed across his face, carrying emotion stronger than surprise. He looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. "You know something strange," he said softly. "I almost never came to this town at all." Eleanor listened silently as Daniel explained how several schools across the country had offered him teaching positions. One opportunity in California promised better pay, another in New York offered prestige, yet somehow he turned them all down. Days before signing his contract, he found himself choosing tiny Willow Creek for reasons he couldn't explain. Since arriving, he said, he carried a feeling unlike anything before, as though life had quietly guided him somewhere important without revealing why. Looking at Eleanor now, standing only inches away, he finally understood what had drawn him there from hundreds of miles away. Fate had been working quietly all along. From that evening onward, everything between them changed naturally. Daniel began spending time with Eleanor after finishing classes each afternoon. Sometimes he helped repair broken shelves in the general store, other evenings they shared warm dinners on the farmhouse porch while the Montana sky turned deep shades of orange and violet above the distant mountains. Conversation came easily between them, effortless and honest in ways neither had experienced before. For the first time in many years, Eleanor felt completely seen by another person. The quiet emptiness she once accepted as permanent slowly disappeared, replaced by happiness growing stronger every single day. Soon the entire town noticed the change. Customers entering the store often found Eleanor smiling brighter than anyone remembered. The older ranchers who once quietly speculated about her lonely future now exchanged amused glances whenever Daniel appeared carrying books under one arm after school ended. Even children began teasing their teacher playfully, asking why he visited Miss Eleanor's store almost every day. Neither Daniel nor Eleanor cared what others thought. Their connection had become something undeniable, something steady and comforting. For both of them, it felt less like falling in love and more like discovering a place their hearts somehow recognized long before they met. Winter arrived early that year, covering Willow Creek in soft white snow just before the annual town festival. Lanterns glowed along the streets while families gathered near music and warm cider stands outside the old church overlooking the valley. Daniel invited Eleanor for a quiet walk away from the crowd. Snowflakes drifted gently through the cold night air as they stopped beneath the church steps overlooking the sleeping town below. Daniel reached slowly into his coat pocket, his expression nervous but certain. Eleanor's heart raced as he revealed a small silver ring reflecting softly beneath the golden lantern light. Daniel stepped closer, his breath visible in the freezing air surrounding them. "I spent years chasing success," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. "But somehow life brought me here, and now I understand why." Holding the ring carefully, he smiled with warmth she would remember forever. "I think some people meet early in life, but others are meant to wait until the timing is perfect." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes before she even realized she was crying. She nodded softly as Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, and in that perfect moment she finally understood why her heart had waited so long.